Now let's get rid of that help window, and I'll also go ahead and get rid of this trace statement since we don't really need that. We want to introduce a couple of other things that we're going to be making a lot of use of inside of our scripting program, and that is the concept of a variable. Now for our purposes, a variable is going to be a word in the script window, but functionally what it's going to be for us is a storage place. You can think of it as a box with a label on it. Now functionally in this program, I can create a variable whenever I need one. I just simply need to give it a name. But we are going to be introducing some rules very quickly that'll set up our variables a little bit better. To explain what I mean by this, I'm going to create a variable and just give it a name. I'll call my variable Fred. Now in creating a variable, all you're doing is creating a storage area. You could think of it as an empty box or a bucket, but the important point here is that it's empty. If I want to fill it up with something, I set it equal to something. I could say Fred equals 2. Now when we're creating and naming our variables, it's very important that we don't reuse some other elements. And I'd like to point out right now that the word Fred is being typed in black color in the program. What that means to us is it's not being recognized as a keyword or an identifier or a string. And that's very important because we don't want to reuse names that the program is going to recognize as something else. Now also, as you might have noticed, any line that's going to be a functional line of code is going to end with a semicolon. So right after I set Fred equal to 2, I'm going to put a semicolon at the end. That's our way of telling the program that's the end of the line. And in our case, the semicolon is basically saying, go ahead and execute this one complete line of code. Now that we've created a variable called Fred and set it equal to 2, if we want to access it, this is where our trace statement can come in handy. Now, normally in a program, we'd be using this variable for something, but if I simply want to see if the variable exists, what I could do is add a trace statement. I could say trace, and in this case, I'll put in here Fred. Now notice I didn't put that in quotes. Because I don't want it to type the word Fred out, I want to evaluate what Fred is set to, and that would be 2. I'll put a semicolon to end this line, and we'll do a Control-Enter to test our movie out so far. Now you can see I've got 3 traces. Hello world message at the top, something else, and there's my trace of the Fred variable. What we can see by this is that the program can store values for them, and we can retrieve them later anytime we want to. Now that small concept is fundamental for us understanding how ActionScript is going to interact with the other elements of our existing movie. In a way, we can think of them as containers just like our variable Fred.